Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the oceans covering most of our planet have reached a temperature humans have never recorded for that time of year. It might sound like just another scientific number, but the ocean isn't simply a giant body of water. It controls enormous parts of Earth's climate system, influences rainfall and storms, stores huge amounts of heat, and supports billions of living organisms. In July 2026, global ocean temperatures reached a new July record in the extrapolar oceans. But here's the scary part. What happens when Earth's biggest heat reservoir keeps getting warmer? To understand that, we need to look at what is happening beneath the surface. Fact number 1. The ocean just broke a record. In July 2026, the average sea surface temperature across the world's extrapolar oceans reached 20.96 degrees Celsius, making it the highest July value in the Copernicus record. The previous July record was 20.89 degrees Celsius, set in 2023. A difference of only a few hundredths of a degree may sound tiny, but we're talking about an enormous area of ocean containing an almost unimaginable amount of water. Even a small increase across such a huge system represents a massive amount of additional stored energy. And this record becomes even more important when we realize that the ocean has been absorbing most of the excess heat produced by global warming. Fact number 2. The ocean is Earth's giant heat reservoir. When we think about global warming, we usually imagine hotter air and heat waves on land. But the ocean has actually absorbed around 90% of the excess heat associated with human-caused warming. In a way, the ocean has been acting like Earth's giant heat reservoir, taking in energy that would otherwise cause even faster warming of the atmosphere. The problem is that this heat doesn't simply disappear. Warmer water can influence the atmosphere above it, change marine ecosystems, and contribute to other climate effects. And one of the biggest consequences begins when that extra ocean heat interacts with storms. Fact number 3. Warmer oceans can fuel extreme weather. The ocean and atmosphere are constantly exchanging heat and moisture. When ocean temperatures become unusually high, more energy and moisture can become available to the atmosphere. Under the right conditions, this can contribute to heavier rainfall and more intense storms. That's why ocean temperature isn't just an underwater problem. What happens thousands of kilometers away in the ocean can eventually influence weather over land. But storms aren't the only thing affected by warmer water. The creatures living inside these oceans are also experiencing this changing environment, and some of them can't simply adapt overnight. Fact number 4. Marine life is feeling the heat. Marine ecosystems have evolved around particular temperature conditions, and many species are highly sensitive to changes in their environment. When water stays unusually warm for extended periods, some marine animals may move toward cooler areas, while other organisms can experience serious stress. Coral reefs are especially vulnerable to prolonged ocean heat because extreme temperatures can cause coral bleaching. And because marine ecosystems are interconnected, changes affecting one species can eventually influence others. But the ocean's role doesn't stop with marine life. It also interacts with one of Earth's most important frozen regions, the Arctic. Fact number 5. The Arctic is losing ice. The Arctic is warming rapidly compared with the global average, and sea ice continues to face long-term pressure. In July 2026, Arctic sea ice extent was among the lowest July levels in the satellite record. This matters because Sea ice does more than simply provide habitat for Arctic wildlife. Bright ice reflects much of the sun's energy back into space, while darker open ocean absorbs more sunlight. So when ice disappears, more solar energy can be absorbed by the ocean, contributing to additional warming. And that leads us to another dangerous combination: extreme heat meeting extremely dry land. Fact number 6. Heat and dryness create a wildfire threat. High temperatures become especially dangerous when they arrive alongside drought and dry vegetation. When soil loses moisture and plants become extremely dry, landscapes can become much easier to ignite and fires can spread more rapidly. During the summer of 2026, parts of Europe experienced exceptional heat and dryness, creating serious wildfire conditions. But here's something interesting: extreme heat doesn't just dry the ground. Once the soil becomes very dry, the lack of moisture can actually reduce a natural cooling process, potentially making the land heat even more. Fact number 7. Dry soil can make heat worse. Normally, water in the soil evaporates into the atmosphere, and evaporation uses energy that helps cool the land. But when the soil becomes extremely dry, there is less water available for this natural cooling process. The sun's energy can then contribute directly to heating the surface. This creates a worrying cycle. High temperatures dry the soil, dry soil reduces cooling, and reduced cooling can contribute to even hotter land. But heat and drought aren't only changing the temperature of the ground. They're also changing one of Earth's most important systems, the movement of water. Fact number 8. Climate change is changing the water cycle. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture, which means climate change can influence both rainfall and drought. Some regions can experience periods of extremely heavy rainfall, while others face prolonged dry conditions. This might sound contradictory, but both can happen within the same changing climate system. The problem becomes especially serious when communities depend on predictable rainfall for agriculture, drinking water, and reservoirs. And this brings us to an important connection. Climate change isn't only about the ocean and atmosphere. It can directly affect the fresh water that humans depend on. Fact number 9. Fresh water is connected to the climate system. Fresh water doesn't exist separately from the rest of Earth's climate system. Rainfall, snow, glaciers, rivers, groundwater, and evaporation are all connected. Through the global water cycle, when temperatures rise, evaporation can increase and snow and ice can melt differently, while rainfall patterns can also shift. In some regions, this can mean more water arriving in intense bursts, while other areas may face longer dry periods. And there's another part of this story that affects hundreds of millions of people: the world's coastlines. Fact number 10. Warmer oceans help raise sea levels. When seawater becomes warmer, it expands. This phenomenon, known as thermal expansion, is one of the reasons ocean warming contributes to rising sea levels. On top of that, melting glaciers and ice sheets add more water to the oceans. Rising seas can increase the risks faced by coastal communities, especially during storms and unusually high tides. So an increase in ocean temperature doesn't remain an invisible number on a scientific chart. It can eventually affect coastlines, infrastructure, and communities. And while rising seas are a long-term concern, another major climate impact has already been appearing in places like Europe. Fact number 11. Extreme heat is becoming a bigger challenge. During the summer of 2026, parts of Europe experienced exceptional heat and dryness. What makes such events particularly concerning is the way different climate factors can combine. High temperatures can dry vegetation, low rainfall can reduce soil moisture, and dry landscapes can increase wildfire risk. This shows why scientists don't look at temperature alone. They examine how heat interacts with rainfall, soil moisture, oceans, and atmospheric conditions. And that leads to an important point that is often misunderstood when people hear the words global warming. Fact number 12. Global warming doesn't mean every day is hotter. Global warming doesn't mean that every single place on Earth becomes hotter every single day. Weather can still change dramatically from one day to another, and cold temperatures or snow can still occur. The difference is between weather and climate. Weather describes short-term conditions, while climate describes long-term patterns over many years. So one unusually cold day doesn't disprove global warming, just as one extremely hot day doesn't prove it by itself. Scientists instead look at decades of measurements to understand the bigger picture, and that bigger picture reveals something much more complicated than simply Earth is getting hotter. Fact number 13. The same climate can produce floods and droughts. One of the strangest aspects of a warming climate is that different places can experience seemingly opposite extremes. One region may receive intense rainfall and flooding, while another is experiencing severe drought. A warmer atmosphere can hold more water vapor, while changing circulation patterns and increased evaporation can influence where and when that moisture falls. This means climate change can disrupt the patterns that societies have depended on for generations. But before we conclude that every extreme event is caused by climate change, there's an important scientific distinction we need to understand. Fact number 14. One record doesn't tell the whole story. A single record-breaking month doesn't tell scientists everything about Earth's climate. Natural variations occur, and individual years can be influenced by phenomena such as El Niño and La Niña. What matters most is the long-term pattern. Scientists compare temperature records, ocean heat, sea ice, glaciers, sea levels, and many other indicators over decades. When multiple independent measurements show consistent long-term changes, scientists can identify the underlying climate trend with much greater confidence. And that's why the July 2026 ocean record matters, not because one month determines the planet's future, but because it becomes another piece of a much larger picture. Fact number 15. So what happens next? The most important thing to understand is that Earth's future isn't completely predetermined. The amount of future warming depends heavily on greenhouse gas emissions, natural climate variability, and how effectively societies adapt. If warming continues, the risks associated with extreme heat, ocean warming, drought, wildfire, melting ice, and rising seas can become more serious. But that doesn't mean the planet suddenly becomes unlivable. It means the choices made today can influence how severe future impacts become. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson behind this new climate record. The number itself isn't the real story, the direction of the trend is. The ocean is telling us that Earth is storing more heat, and the question now is what humanity does with that warning. So, the next time you hear that Earth has broken another temperature record, remember it's not just a number on a chart. Behind that number are warmer oceans, melting ice, changing rainfall, stressed ecosystems, and communities facing a changing climate. But the future is still being written. The decisions we make today can influence how extreme tomorrow's climate becomes. If you learned something new, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to CYFacts, and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating facts about our planet, science, technology, and the future. This is CYFacts, and remember, the world is full of facts you probably never knew.